Getting the sound of legendary hardware compressors from their software counterparts has always been many mixing engineers' dream. MTurboCompressor is Melder Productions' response to this request. However, it's not only an emulator of classic analog compressors, it's rather a compressor designer, allowing you to imitate any compressor, or you can come up with your own custom design. To be that versatile, MTurboCompressor is made up of 4 envelope followers, 4 dynamic processors, dynamic equalizer, and 2 multi-mode saturators. It's a huge power for a single plugin, and in this introduction video, we're not even going to touch it. Instead, I'll switch to the default active presets mode, where I'd like to show you how to get a sound you want quickly and easily. Here, we find 14 models of famous hardware units, plus some extra designs covering all types of tasks. To find out about a particular unit, click on the Information button. Here, we are given a short description of the hardware unit and a suggestion on which material it works the best. Let's hear some of them in action. You've noticed, of course, that all presets share more or less similar user interface. And what I personally like is it doesn't copy the actual hardware panels, including their wear scars and dust. Thus, it doesn't take your attention away from the sound. I must also mention that all active presets are created in such a way that they come into action as soon as they are selected. That is, unless the input signal is very low, the plugin will start compressing as soon as we select a preset. It's done on purpose to give you a taste of the model's character when you're going through the preset list. Let's explore the plugin's interface. On the top, we find level-related controllers like the input and output gain, dry-wet balance, compression and saturation. In the middle, there are classic compressor parameters like the threshold, ratio, attack and release. I must mention that the type of parameters depends on the emulated model and may vary from one preset to another. Finally, we find the detector parameters. I think for those who are familiar with the actual original units, seeing the saturation and detector controllers here is a bit unusual. And yet, by adding them, Melder Production decided to put a chock on the top to give us even more room for experimentation. For a successful use of the MTurboCompressor, the input signal should not be too low, neither too high. Start off by setting the input gain parameter. If the input signal level is too low, you may need to increase it. Increase the attack time to emphasize the snappy sounds of drums or percussion. The release time determines how quickly the compressor's reduction goes back to 0 decibels after the signal level has fallen lower than the threshold. Small values make it fast, but can increase distortions. Big ones decrease the distortions, but can make the compressor miss the useful parts of a signal. The great way to assess the compressor's work is to switch on the level shape graph. Here, we can clearly see what the plug-in is doing. By this time, you must get your compressor running more or less the way you like. Now, you could try the compression, saturation, and dry-wet parameters for experimentation. The compression controls the amount of compression, usually by simultaneously raising the input gain and reducing the output one. At the same time, the signal's volume stays approximately the same. For fans of the parallel compression, there is the dry-wet controller setting the balance between the original and processed sounds. Finally, if you want to add some distortions, use the saturation knob. It's a welcome feature, especially for those who take a compression rather as a creative effect and not just as a dynamic reduction tool. I've already mentioned the Detector controllers. They are for the compressor's fine-tuning. Initially, the compressor equally reacts to the full frequency range, and that works most of the time. However, sometimes we need the compressor sensitive only to a part of it. For instance, I'm processing a full mix, and I want to add more punch to the bass drum. In this case, I must get the compressor reacting to the bass drum more than to the rest of the mix. For that, I simply cut all but bass frequencies utilizing the high and low pass filters, like this. And now, my compressor works as I wanted it to. Carefully listen to the bass drum.
Even if it's for the night, alright, yeah, all night. So baby, let's dance.
The Detector also has a single band EQ located at the bottom. Again, use it to set the compressor's sensitivity to a particular frequency range. Positive gain values will make the compressor squash harder.
Let me paint my side of the story. I mean, there ain't much exciting anymore. They blatantly lying, and of course, so their followers don't know any better. Looking like a setup. Never will I ever let them second guess me. Raised not to believe in transparency for as long as I breathe.
And negative ones will do the opposite.
Let me paint my side of the story. I mean, there ain't much exciting anymore. They blatantly lying, and of course, so their followers don't know any better. Looking like a setup. Never will I ever let them second guess me.
However, don't confuse it with a multi-band compression. The plugin works in broadband all the time. We just set its attention, so to speak, to some frequency range. Another useful function we find here is the sidechain input button. It allows us to use an external control signal. A classic example would be ducking a bass part each time a bass drum hits. When working with a compressor, you can utilize the automatic gain compensation function, or AGC in short. It has two modes. What you need is the mode activated by the Set button. If you press it, the AGC will match the output level with the input one. Now, if you click on the Bypass button, you can assess the compressor's job without being fooled by the volume change. Finally, let's take a drum track and polish it quickly. Here is how it sounds. It holds a bass drum, snare and room tracks. For the bass drum, I'm going to use the MTurbo preset. The initial settings push the compressor quite hard already. First, I want to make sure I'm monitoring the sound at the same original level. For that, I use the automatic gain compensation function. It sounds pretty good to me. How about even more compression or saturation? Why not? Each new setting I save as a new preset in the AH preset selector. Having done some experiments, I ended up with a default MTurbo preset. For the snare, I decided to go with the dB Meld 160. Again, the default settings already give a pretty good sound. I can't advise on the sound itself, as this is a purely matter of your personal taste. However, methodology here is exactly the same as with the bass drum. I ended up with these settings which are very close to the default ones. Basically, I just modified the compression and attack parameters. For the room track, I utilized MPI 2500 preset. After playing around with its settings, I went back to the default ones and just added the compression a bit. That's all. Here is the track. Let's hear all tracks together. I think you'll agree that the drums sound punchier and more solid, and I didn't even use a bus compression. As you can see, the default active presets give a decent sound straight away. That makes using the MTurbo compressor quick and easy. I wish every compressor was.